Alright, I'm now on document 15, and I'll just try to go through a little bit of this. Well, before we go through it, let's take a quick look at document 16, because this is the diagram. This is in document 16. Now remember, you can get all of these. It's 54 pages from this book. We'll just call it Freely Given because I don't know the title of it. And you can go to thctrust.org, and this is under the discharge debt first study menu. So what you see here, and I think if I'm going to summarize what the author is saying, is in this system over here you have a bill, right? And that's this system where there's a bill. That's a type of the debt-based system. And then you have a note in the middle. The note, as you see here, represents the present liability. This is why I always say when you're in a closing transaction, and a lot of different people have claims in the closing to be paid, there's adjustments going on. And as they have down here, adjustment, right? So there's adjustments going on. So a note is a promise to pay because you don't really have the full liability in one part, and that's just how the commerce works. So the note is a promise to pay, and a note is supposed to be accepted. So a note is acceptable to set off, you will say, a present liability. And that's why you present the note, and that's why you see present or present right here for it's a liability. So what happens, a note is typically a promise to pay, and the pay is over here on the bond side. That's what we were seeing. The bond is the payment to balance the obligation of the bill. So what typically happens is people go into a closing with a mortgage, and then they have a set off after they tender the note. They don't really get they don't make their first mortgage payment till maybe 60 or 90 days later. Well, that's not their first payment. That's their first bill. That's when they start getting the bill, because they go back into the sin system because they never knew how to discharge the bill with the bond. That's kind of what they're showing there. Let's see. Here we go here. All right. I was just going over some basics of the whole monetary system up until the present. I gave a very short brief, but again, everything that I just covered, I was talking about those 54 pages. And if you log into the website, you come over here and then you click this menu that says basics. It's a couple videos and things here that you can watch on this page. But right here is where I got those downloads, and you can see like 11 through 15. We were looking at probably like 11 through 15, but there's 1 through 54. So that's kind of the background, and the progression of things just kind of moves down this menu. You know, we get a little bit more advanced and we look at some things over here. But now I want to give that little background so we can jump into a little bit further of this discharging mortgage study, if you will. Now, so to start, I want to show you. Now we're dealing with California, and I believe California is the model for all, or I say the majority of states, when it comes to discharging a mortgage if it's possible. Now some of the reason why we looked at the previous video, because I wanted to help people understand that when they sending you the statement every month with the coupon, and you have to send a bill for your mortgage, or you send dollar bills, or you pay every month, that is the bill system, the send system, where you're being billed for past liabilities of the note, and they continue to bill you. Remember, we was looking at the T ledger, so I wanted to kind of demonstrate that the bill of exchange may be to set off a past liability, but it's not sufficient for a mortgage when there's a still present liability on the note and things like that. It seems the bill of exchange just doesn't work. A promissory note is what created the obligation, right? So you use the promissory note, or you can't use a note, which is an obligation, to discharge an obligation. It's just kind of like it just doesn't work that way. As we've seen, notes insure bills and notes, but it's not a permanent discharge. So to discharge the entire obligation, you need a bond, as we've seen. And in this particular case, the charge that we want to discharge is the deed of trust, or you can say it's the mortgage. This is the charge against the owner's property, right? And where is that property maintained? Okay, obviously in the county. So there's real property, but we're also talking about the commercial paper, which is the note. The note is the property of the owner and is secured by a mortgage, and this is in a county record book somewhere. So in order to discharge the mortgage, you need to also record the bond in the same location where the charge is. The only way to discharge something is bring the negative with the positive and bring them both together, hence the word bond, so that discharge can occur. So again, I'm saying it like this to make it understandable. If the deed of trust or the charging instrument, the mortgage, is recorded in the county books, then so will the discharge or the bond for discharging the obligation, right? So now, let me say this here. We'll read right here from the site. A surety bond to insure the note. My research indicates that the best approach for discharging a mortgage is a bond. Either a bond securing the note during the purchase of, or a bond discharging the remaining obligation under a mortgage. So as I spoke about in an earlier video, the ability to purchase real property in closing with a secured promissory note, but the note must be secured by a bond and not a mortgage. If it's secured by a mortgage, you're borrowing and you're going on the debt side of the ledger. If it's secured by a bond, you're on the credit side of the ledger. So that is the things we kind of want to look at when it comes to purchasing property as a secured party, right? We want to purchase it using our credit, basically our credit assets. But when you're in a mortgage already, you're under a situation where you have to discharge it. So the bond wouldn't be presented in the closing. It would be presented in the county or either to the trustee or something. But we'll get to that. So we're talking about, I'm going to basically show you, since we're talking about bonds, this is the procedure and the structure for the bond of discharging a mortgage in California. And I know it's for California because I've read the codes and I've researched it for myself, but I also believe that it's the way it's done everywhere that does mortgages. I believe you could actually do it the same way. So what I want to first look at, we're going to only look at this briefly because we're really talking about bonds, and I probably have to do, let's see, do I want to do that in this video or make it a separate video? Yeah, we're going to do a whole separate video where I probably dive into just the mortgage discharge. But remember, as I was saying earlier, the obligation is on the books in the county, which is the mortgage. So you have to join the bond to the obligation to discharge it, and the bond needs to be recorded in the county. So in California, this procedure is governed under California Civil Code 2941.7 B. I only have A on the screen. Let's see if we can go to California Civil Code 2941.7. You seen that? It popped up. Then they're like, no, you got to have a trial. Oh, here it is. Civil Code 2941.7. Discharge when mortgagee or beneficiary cannot be located or refuses to execute the that's supposed to say reconveyance. And that's really your key right there. That's all I was getting to. Section B pretty much occurs. Here it is. The bond shall be acceptable to the trustee. Okay, here we go. Here's the summary of it. This is perfect. Whenever the obligation secured by a mortgage or deed of trust has been fully satisfied and the present mortgagee or beneficiary of record cannot be located after a diligent search or refuses to execute and deliver a proper certificate of discharge or request for reconveyance, or whenever a specified balance including a principal and interest remains due and the mortgagor or trustor or the mortgagors of trustor, successor, and interest cannot after diligent search locate the then mortgagee or beneficiary of record, the lien of any mortgage or deed of trust shall be released. Then the mortgagor or trustor of the mortgagor's trustor, successor, and interest records or causes to be recorded in the office of the county recorder, the county in which the encumbered encumbered property is located, a corporate bond accompanied by a declaration as specified in Section B. So this is, I'm sorry I didn't read that correctly, but it's basically telling you that if the trustee or the beneficiary of the mortgage refuses to execute a full reconveyance after you fully satisfy the mortgage, i.e. pay off the payoff statement with your banker's acceptance or your banker's note, your bill of exchange, then you could issue a corporate bond accompanied by a declaration as specified in subdivision B. Now, corporate bond, a lot of people will get hung up on this thing about the corporate bond because this can be a hang up. It can be a roadblock. So you have to do the research to find the laws that that state specifically, even when states require a corporate bond, an individual surety will suffice, or you can even simply pledge collateral in lieu of an individual surety. So this is where you have certain federal laws that supersede state laws. And then it's not only that, you also have the common law, which there's also a remedy in California to sidestep this requirement for a corporate bond because you're operating under the common law. And those are more advanced topics, so we can discuss that, but that's an offline topic. And of course, if we're talking about discharging mortgages, you have to holler at me offline if you need my personal flavor on it. But again, here, what we're basically talking about is the bond that discharges the obligation. So you have it right here. And you can see what it looks like. Now this is just so you can follow along again. When you're on thctrust.org, under the Discharge Debt Advanced Topics menu, we're down here. Click this link right here. And this is, if you scroll down here, an example out of one of the California Clerk's Recordings Manual of what such a bond and declaration would look like under California Code 2941.7. So this is an example. Here's the declaration and here's the bond. So what's important for you to know if you were doing this is that you have to backward engineer. You know what I'm saying? So what I mean is not backward engineer, but we've seen the basis or the grounds for recording the bond to discharge the mortgage. So it means you have to do an administrative procedure first. The administrative procedure would be requesting the payoff statement, discharging the payoff statement, requesting a full reconveyance, doing your administrative procedure so that you can establish the fact that they refuse to execute the reconveyance, and then you can put in this declaration and the bond for reconveyance. Now, if you continue to read, we didn't continue to read what we were reading under the summary about what that code section says. There's timelines in there. That's why you have to go back and read it. This just, what we're looking at right here, just gives you an example of the requirements in order to get the expected results of discharging the mortgage. You want to make sure all these requirements are done, because it's not a thing, it's not really a question of will they let you. No, it's if you get this recorded as a matter of law and fact, the mortgage is discharged in a certain amount of days. So you have to go backwards and read 2941 and all of that, and you'll know how to set up the administrative procedure, right? So, but let's look at the declaration. It's to evidence the facts concerning a fully satisfied obligation secured by a mortgage or deed of trust, and the present mortgagee or beneficiary cannot be located or refuses to execute a request for reconveyance. What needs to be in it? This statement, that the statement is recorded in accordance with Civil Code section 2941.7. So you can already see that they're taking full control over the bond, because they're making you fall under the Civil Code 2941.7. So they are narrowing down your rights and your freedoms so that they can have a determination on how this plays out. You know, maybe that's a problem, maybe it's not a problem. You know, you gotta just do a little research, go read about this, and we can come back and discuss it more if you want to, if you have some questions. So the names of the trustors and the mortgagor, the names of the trustors, the mortgagors, the names of the beneficiaries. What you're going to do is you're going to get a copy of your mortgage instrument, because it's going to give you all the information that they're requesting here, and you have to complete this form. It's going to have all of that substance in it. This declaration is recorded pursuant to Civil Code section 2941.7. Blank is the original trustor slash mortgagor under the involved deed of trust, and blank are the beneficiaries. The mortgagor or trustor is going to be you, or whoever it is that's discharging their mortgage or deed of trust. So you follow this to a T. Have somebody else look over it, because when you go to record these documents, man, these examiners are very good, and if you go have anything wrong, they're gonna probably send you away, and they probably not gonna tell you what's wrong. So make sure you set this up right. You read all the references, you take notes, and you draw out your plan. And now you have the bond. And once again, let's look at the bond. The purpose of the bond is to evidence the facts concerning a fully satisfied obligation secured by a mortgage or deed of trust, and the present mortgagee or beneficiary cannot be located or refuses to execute a reconveyance. Once again, it tells you what needs to be in here. It must be accompanied by the declaration on page 152. We just looked at that. Recording reference to the deed of trust. Why does it record reference to the deed of trust? Because it's going to be bonded, adjoined to the deed of trust, right? All right, so I had to jump back in here. So now, from here, I want to show you an example of a real bond. And this is one way that a secured party creditor might tender a bond, right? Now, this is not for you to use this exact same method. This is just so that you can see a tangible example and better understand how, as a secured party creditor, you might create a bond and use it in commerce. Now, again, before you can really fully comprehend how bonds are used, you have to understand trusts. Because when you are using a bond, it has to be tendered with the declaration, and the declaration is basically a trust, spelling out additional terms of the bond, if you will.